I will never forget that night, not because of what was said, but because of how the air changed, how every sound in the room seemed to sharpen, how every eye turned toward me, and how a single moment split my life clean in two. We were at a close friend's anniversary dinner, the kind of night that's supposed to remind you why marriage matters. The laughter, the toasts, the stories of years spent together through thick and thin. The restaurant was warm, golden light flickering off crystal glasses, the scent of roasted salmon and white wine lingering in the air. I remember thinking how good everything looked, how normal it all felt. I had no idea I was about to lose everything in the most humiliating way imaginable. My wife Elise sat beside me, her hand occasionally brushing mine as she reached for her drink. She looked stunning. That soft red dress she wore on our honeymoon in Napa, her hair falling perfectly around her shoulders, her laugh smooth and melodic. She always knew how to command a room without even trying. But that night, something about her laughter was different. It was too sharp, too loud, too practiced. Across the room sat Daniel, a man I barely knew, a coworker of hers apparently. He had one of those smug, confident faces, the kind that made you instantly dislike him even if you couldn't explain why. I caught her looking at him more than once, not just a glance, but that long, magnetic stare that lingers too long to be innocent, the kind of look that says something's already been decided. At first, I told myself I was imagining it. We'd been married 7 years. She'd been through my worst moments, and I'd been through hers. Surely, we were stronger than this. But every minute that passed made denial harder to hold on to. I could feel something unraveling. When the main course arrived, I tried to place my hand on hers under the table, just to remind her, maybe to ground us both. But she pulled away instantly. Not subtly, not politely, just withdrew, like my touch repulsed her. She didn't even glance at me. Instead, she turned to Daniel and laughed at something he said. It wasn't the kind of laughter you share with a friend. It was flirtatious, reckless. The laughter of someone who no longer feels bound by promises. I kept my composure, smiled, nodded at the conversation I wasn't part of, pretended not to notice the sideways glances from friends who definitely had. My chest felt tight, my pulse unsteady, but I said nothing. I told myself, just get through the night. Then it happened. Elise tapped her spoon against her glass. Ding, ding, ding. And the chatter slowly died. Everyone turned to her. She stood tall, her glass of wine in hand, her cheeks flushed, eyes glinting with a strange mix of pride and defiance. I just want to say something, she began, her voice clear and deliberate. I can't keep pretending anymore. The room fell dead silent. My heart dropped into my stomach. She turned her gaze toward me, not tender, not guilty, just cold and resolved. I've chosen to be with Daniel. There it was. The world didn't just stop, it collapsed inward. I could hear someone gasp. Someone else muttered her name in disbelief. Daniel shifted in his chair, half smiling like this was some kind of bold, romantic declaration instead of a public execution. I remember the exact feeling that followed, a deep, slow-burning heat that climbed from my chest to my throat. Not anger, not sorrow, something colder, final. I looked at her, really looked at her, and realized I didn't recognize this person. This wasn't the woman who fell asleep next to me every night, who once cried when I forgot our anniversary, who held me when I lost my father. This was someone else entirely, someone who had planned this, someone who wanted an audience. I stood up slowly, pushing my chair back so gently the sound was almost polite. I looked her dead in the eyes and said, "You've made your choice." My voice didn't shake, even though my heart was hammering in my chest. And so have I. Then I reached into my pocket, slipped off my wedding ring, and placed it on the table beside her glass. The sound, that faint metallic click, cut through the silence like a bell at the end of a ceremony. Her face drained of color. She hadn't expected this. She wanted a scene. Begging, tears, humiliation. What she got was silence and finality. I straightened my jacket, nodded once to our host, and walked out. Behind me, I heard murmurs break out, chairs scraping, someone calling my name. I didn't turn back. I stepped into the cold night air, the wind hitting my face like a slap, and for the first time in months, I felt something close to clarity. That night, I drove with no destination, just me, the dark highway, and the distant hum of the city lights. I replayed every moment of our marriage, the good, the bad, the quiet mornings and loud fights, and it all felt like scenes from someone else's life. I pulled over eventually, parked at an overlook that faced the river, and just sat there. The reflection of the city shimmered in the water, and all I could think was how fragile everything really is. Love, trust, loyalty. You think they're solid until one night proves they're made of glass. I didn't cry. I thought I would. But there was nothing left to cry for. Just emptiness, then a strange calm. I went home around 2 a.m., packed a bag, and slept on the couch in my office. The next morning I called my lawyer. The divorce papers were already drafted. I'd prepared them weeks earlier when I started noticing changes in her behavior. Late nights at work, sudden interest in perfume she hadn't worn in years, and a new password on her phone. I'd known. I just didn't want to believe it. Within days, she called me once, twice, then 20 times. I didn't answer. When she finally showed up at my office, she looked nothing like the woman from that dinner. Her eyes were swollen, her confidence gone. "Caleb, please," she said. I made a mistake, but her voice trembled like she already knew it was too late. I let her talk, watched her twist her wedding band nervously. When she was done, I simply said, "You didn't make a mistake, Elise. You made a choice." Then I handed her the papers. She signed them with shaking hands. A month later, the divorce was finalized. I moved into a downtown apartment, small, minimal, clean, the kind of place that didn't hold echoes of someone else's voice. I started going to the gym again, meeting new people, reconnecting with friends I'd drifted from. Work thrived. My focus was sharp, my energy unmatched. Every success felt like another step away from the ashes she left behind. Meanwhile, word got around about what she had done. Our social circle wasn't kind. Her friends distanced themselves. Her parents, who had once adored me, called to apologize. Her mother cried on the phone, saying, "We don't understand what got into her." I told her not to worry. Some people only learn what they've lost when the silence becomes louder than love ever was. Weeks turned into months. One evening, as I left the office late, I saw Elise waiting near my car. She looked smaller somehow, fragile, clutching a coat around her shoulders. "Caleb," she started, voice barely above a whisper, "I just wanted to see you. Daniel's gone. He said I wasn't what he thought I was." I stayed silent. She continued, her words tumbling out. "I thought it would make me happy. I don't know what I thought." Tears streamed down her face, and for a brief second I saw the woman I used to love. But love without respect is just memory. "Elise," I said quietly, "you wanted freedom. Now you have it." I got in my car and drove off. In the rearview mirror, she stood motionless, swallowed by the city lights. After that night, I never saw her again. From time to time, I'd hear things, that she lost her job, that she was living with her sister, that she'd stopped going out altogether, and part of me, the part that still remembered her laughter in better times, hoped she'd find peace someday, but not with me. I had already learned my peace didn't come from fixing what broke. It came from walking away. The truth is, revenge doesn't need to be loud. It doesn't need to hurt the way they hurt you. Sometimes the most devastating revenge is silence, the kind that lets them sit alone with what they did, replaying it over and over until it becomes unbearable. She wanted an audience for her betrayal, and she got one. But in the end, the applause was mine. Because when she chose to destroy everything in front of a crowd, I chose dignity. I chose to walk away with my head high while she drowned in the echo of her own choices. Months later, on the anniversary of that night, I went to the same restaurant. The same table. Different company. Friends this time, people who had seen the worst of me and stayed anyway. I ordered a glass of wine and looked around the room. The laughter, the music, the glow, all of it still beautiful. And for the first time, I realized I wasn't bitter, I wasn't angry, I was free. When I left, I walked by the river again. The city lights reflected on the surface, rippling softly, and I smiled. That night had once been the end of my story, but standing there, feeling the cold air against my face, I knew it had only been the beginning. Elise had taken my past, but she could never touch my peace. And in that quiet, with no witnesses and no applause, I finally understood. True revenge isn't destruction. It's survival. It's rebuilding yourself so completely that the person who tried to break you no longer recognizes what you become. That's dignity. That's freedom. That's me, Caleb Monroe, the man she tried to humiliate, the man she thought she destroyed, but the man who simply walked away and never looked back.